Hello and welcome to Birds of a Feather, a microcast uncovering the stories behind meaningful professional connections. My name is Jeremy, and I'm the co-founder of Feather. And everyone out there knows that special someone, that someone who's just brilliant at building meaningful connections. And my special someone happens to be my best friend and my wife. And today I'm beyond excited to welcome my better half, my forever partner, Kristina. Now, Kristina is a large part of the inspiration behind Feather, and has invested countless nights talking me off a ledge and talking me through what building meaningful connection really takes, selflessly supporting this whole roller coaster ride of building a startup. So thank you for that. And, in all honesty, I'm actually trying to bottle up some of her EQ and relationship development skills to make the brains and the heart behind Feather. Now, I can go on for days about Kristina being an amazing friend, wife, sister, and of course, mother of our amazing two little kids. But I want to also call out that, she has a day job and she's also full-time at Zscaler as a senior customer success manager, partnering with cybersecurity divisions in some of the largest global companies on the West Coast in the US. She's worked in billion-dollar global infrastructure projects focused in Southern California from companies like Tesla and their solar division, and has spent years building people-first relationships in executive recruiting. Kristina, you're the first person to give the shirt off your back, and I may think you have the highest EQ out of anybody I've ever met, and it's really inspires me every day to level up. So thank you so much for being here and for being my biggest supporter along the journey.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I am so excited. You've been working really hard on a lot of things in the background with regards to Feather and setting up this podcast even, and how you've networked. You've been an inspiration to me as well. So I am so grateful to be joining you on this, but also just joining you on this journey that we've been on together so far, and the journey called life.
That's right. It's been fun. And I feel like we've got a lot more fun ahead of us. And the immediate next bit of fun is getting some of your perspective. So let's kick off here with your perspective just on how you think about relationships in general.
So I think that relationships are the most important thing in our lives. So when you do any research and you find out about longevity and centenarians, one of the core factors amongst people living long and full lives is relationships, their social connections. And that has been something that's always been intriguing to me, and something that, as part of my culture and upbringing too, has been integral in creating the life that I have. So just ensuring that relationships are really at the core is such a big part of life.
Yeah, it's data backed too, right? So I may have mentioned this on one of the other podcasts, but the Harvard University studied people for 90 years. It was the longest running study of adults. And they found that, you're right, like real social connection and purpose that comes from that is what keeps us living longer. It's not just the diet. It's not just getting to the gym, but it's about having that why and that purpose. And yeah, I mean, anybody that you ask that knows you, you bring a lot of that centricity and give a lot back to people. But also it's a cultural thing, right? I came from like a not as cultured of upbringing, and joined your family and was like, obviously taught a lot of things in that process. But I think our experiences and our cultures and the things that we've done shape our approach to how we build relationships. So curious, like, what was it like growing up? What was it like? How are relationships a part of your kind of upbringing and the culture, and how is that translated into your approach today?
So I feel very, very lucky, very blessed to have grown up in the family that I have. But a big part of it, just like you were saying, is culture, I feel like too. So a lot of friends that I have who come from different backgrounds, who are immigrant families too, especially, they come from a background of establishing community being a huge part of their lives. So in building community, and as you are aware, even in America here with networking, right? That's still building community, leaning on people who are part of your network to help lift you up, to lift up others, and then vice versa. And so growing up, that was at our core for sure. How do we help each other? How do we going back as far as doing school projects? Like, I know that my parents were both there, like, okay, we need to build this mission for your second grade project. And here is a box. What do we use? And we did it together. And part of it is, in America, is very individualized. And maybe some people would look at that like, well, that was your project. You should have been doing that all by yourself. But part of my growing up is we help each other and we leverage the tools and the people that are part of our lives to help us to get to a better outcome. So in that case, if I would have done it on my own, which actually I did do it on my own, and it was a box spray painted this almost vomit yellow color. And then I went back and my parents and I worked on it together and it became an actual mission. We used foam and cardboard to create actual different dimensions of the mission. And it looked like a mission versus a cardboard box just covered in paint. And if I hadn't leveraged my network, which at that time were my parents, then I wouldn't have had the best outcome. And at the end of the day, that mission in my second grade class or third grade class was on display for the entire year. So I think that really sums up how integrated my family is like, even if you have anything to do, they're willing to step up and make sure that it can be the best.
Knowing how much mom and dad love you, I'm sure that next time that I go over to their house, I'm going to go looking for this project. They probably still have it tucked away somewhere. So it sounds awesome.
And, going even beyond that, I think we're all proud of it because we all participated in creating it.
Right. I mean, you're hitting on something that's really important, which is like these kind of centers of influence and these micro networks, which doesn't have to just be a professional network, but it's about little communities that can really be strong. When we were talking about having you come on here, I wasn't thinking maybe to talk as much about the hypnobirthing community or the things that you're doing with moms, but I think it's really important because it's a big part of your identity that you kind of are part of these different communities and are involved in them and bring a lot of connectivity. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about the different types of communities and how you think about that.
Yeah, and actually I something that just came up that shows like how connected the relationships are. So one, I work, like you said, for a large cybersecurity company, Zscaler, and it's been wonderful. I've been there for 6 years, and which in this world is like a lifetime because people move from company to company so quickly. But it's been such a privilege and a pleasure to work for this wonderful company. I really believe in what they're doing. And building those relationships there is one facet, just like you were saying. So I have my technology and my work people community that I've built. And then through now having children, it grew a whole new love in a different community. So becoming a mother, connecting with other mothers, and it was something that I could have never anticipated in the way that it impacted me. When I became a mother, it gave me this gratitude for myself and also this awe for others who are in the same position, and women actually in general. And so I wanted to, after having my child, set out to improve others' lives in the way that I feel that, and honor other mothers in the way that I felt compelled to do after becoming a mother, because it was just so empowering. And so I, like you shared, I did hypnobirthing as a pre-birth class before I had my first. And that, I think, helped me prepare for birth a lot. And so that is another community, and is hypnobirthing, and understanding the other mothers that were in the course with me, other mothers who took the initial class with me. And so I became hypnobirthing certified. And then in addition to that, joining moms groups. So different moms groups. And now, as my child has gotten older, been a part of the moms groups at school. So there's like moms groups at school. There were like amongst my friends as they became mothers after me, asking me questions. My sister, having a new child after me, asking questions around the, pregnancy process, around the birth and labor process, and then postpartum, how do you deal with that? And then going into now each step that I've been able to walk through with you and with our children has changed those. I've built more communities. But what I was going to share is the bridging, because people do recognize I am passionate about that, about parenting, about becoming a mother, and how much grace and gratitude we should have for mothers during the critical times of postpartum, especially, and pregnancy. That I had one of my colleagues from Zscaler reach out to me just last night and ask me, like, hey, my sister's pregnant and I'd like to create a postpartum kit for her. Can you help me with that? Because I know that you did so many wonderful things and shared that with us. So this morning I created an Amazon list and I sent that over to her of everything that she could create a postpartum care kit for her sister. So when all the worlds can collide because of just like engaging with others and whatever you have passion about.
It's remarkable. I'm going to tell a little story about how I've experienced this with you in just a minute, but it's like a perfect segue into how much effort it actually takes. Because, if you know one person, then you can channel the effort to one person. But if you're a mom working full time, dealing with a needy husband like me, you got 3 full-time jobs, and you're building all of these different kind of circles and communities. And it takes effort, it takes intentionality. And so one of the questions that I was thinking of is that as you think about how you nurture these key relationships, like the things you do to make personal relationships strong, how do you see that translating to the things that you do in your professional relationships? And where is the line? And how do you think about that?
So I think that's a very interesting question, where is the line, right? Because I think that there is a line, right? But there's also human connection that is the most important thing amongst all relationships. So when it comes to my professional and business relationships, I do have a level of professionalism that remains there. And however, I think that you also have to have vulnerability in order to have connection, and you have to share, I don't want to say like enough, but somewhat enough of yourself in an open way to gain that trust and continue to build that relationship, especially in a professional manner. So I'm very close with my boss, which I am so grateful for. She has been super helpful with me growing in my career and growing with work, and also been very understanding of where I am in my personal life. And so I think that there is that transparency that I've been able to build with her when you're talking about how do you bring and migrate the different types of relationships, you really are able to sense how open a person wants to be, and then you can utilize that. And it's not, when you say use or utilize, I don't mean it with a negative connotation, but it can help improve both. And for me, it gives me this connection that I have with my leader. It helps me to want to do even better at work because we have a personal relationship as well. So I wouldn't necessarily say, I mean, I probably would invite her to quite a few things, but I say that there are some lines in professional relationships, like where I might not invite her to the labor or to the birth of my child, but definitely sharing the outcomes. And so building that connectivity, and but also holding a space for the professionalism. So understanding that, how do I benefit her life in her career, and also understand where she is. So have a good enough understanding of her as a person to help our professional relationship. And then she investing in me to understand as me as a person, to help me so that I can be the best employee as well.
Yeah, I think you're hitting on something that's really important, which I know, knowing how self-aware you are and how much effort you put into like evolving as a person and developing in areas and just continuing to level yourself up. I'm sure you're aware of this, but maybe not how great you really are in terms of being in tune with people. I know that you enjoy that, but when I was talking in the beginning here, like actually saying that you're probably the highest EQ person I've ever met, that's true. And I know it's interesting because EQ is one of those things where it's like you're not born with it. You're maybe born, you're born with it, but you can develop it more. It's not like your IQ, and you can put in more effort. But you said something that's really interesting, is like that transparency is really important, to be authentic, to be who you are, and it doesn't need to cross boundaries, personal boundaries, but just being real with people is great. But to go get there, it takes understanding them. To go get there, it takes putting in the effort to show up. And I think what I heard you say was like, you have to know how that other person wants to relate to you too, and
Absolutely.
put in the effort to figure that out. Which in a lot of ways is like a puzzle, because there's so many different types of people and it's always changing. And so I'm curious to just, for anyone who's listening that can relate to that, maybe like, what are some of the ways that you try to understand other people, or how do you think about that?
That's a great question. I really appreciate the compliments too, around EQ. I do try to relate to people, and so in that, I think a part of it is you have to be able to make the effort and also meet people where they are. I would say that's like the biggest advice, because as you're exploring, is you're testing the waters, you're learning about someone new. You can tell in a very quick fashion of how much they want to engage with you, right? And sometimes you need to push that boundary a little bit more to engage more. Like say you're in with a colleague or in a mentorship type of relationship, and you need to push a little bit more on somebody to help them to open up. But I think that also meeting them and understanding how much to push or where that boundary is, it comes from a sense of after interacting with that person. So I would definitely say that it also takes empathy and vulnerability on your side, because at the end of the day, you can only control yourself, and you have zero control. You might have influence over others, but you will have zero control on the actual outcome of how a person behaves, reacts, what they feel, what they think, etc. You have no control over that. And so the only thing that you can do is help educate yourself, be open, and be always curious to willing to learn, right? So if I'm engaging with someone new, I maybe ask some questions of them and try to find out what they like, or what makes them excited. And then I can tell if they are like, I don't want to get to that personal level in a business relationship yet. And maybe they hold back. And then I say, oh, well, what motivates you at work, or how can I help you in this way, to show that I want to engage with them and give them something in order to get some trust or friendliness, or even just a little bit of empathy and openness from their side, right?
Yeah, it's so amazing because there's such a parallel between like it's actually it's not even that there's a parallel. It's just there is a commonality that whether you're building champions to go do deals and you have to earn trust and build credibility and like you got to go and deliver value. But it's the same thing with friends, and it's the same thing in our relationship, and it's the same thing like any relationship really for it to flourish is that hopefully it's mutual,
Yeah.
but at least it requires leaning in and trying to go develop that. But it's also not an easy thing to do. So you just talked about like what their interests are. You talked about what their motivations are. We live in a world today that is really noisy, right? Social media, for example, which is arguably like the biggest kind of vanity metric kind of visual that we deal with, is designed to keep us looking at lots of information.
Yeah.
And so like we're inundated with that. And if 50 people or 100 people, there's no way to keep up with all of those things in a meaningful way. And then in some case, I always talk about how like my dad's a really good example living in New York. He in some cases doesn't post on social media. And so there's an absence of signal. And so it's either too much noise or not enough signal. And at the same time, you've got 3-day jobs. So that's a really hard thing to like manage effectively. And I just would like to hear your thoughts on how do you actually recall the interests? How do you keep accountable to these things? And you blow my mind because I ask you to do something or remember something, and like 3 months later, you still remember that exact thing. And it's, I don't know if it's a photo memory, but or a process, but curious to get your thoughts on that.
Honestly, that's a challenging question because I think innately people, when they're interested in something or someone, they tend to remember certain things. You are incredible at that. Remembering people's names, remembering their interests, remembering how many children they have or where they went on vacation. A lot of that sometimes leaves me, right? But I might remember like something about that they did have a couple children, or that they were passionate about snowboarding, or that they were seeing like what did they talk about the most, right? Something like that I would remember. Or and I think that varies by person. But some of the tools, and what I'm hoping with Feather as well, is that having some little reminders, understanding like, okay, maybe when I meet somebody, even randomly, which I do a lot, I meet random people out and will take somebody's phone number. I will jot down where I met them, what a little bit of notes of what we chatted about. And what I do is I immediately send them a text message, and I put in my information, where we met. And, I generally put my husband's names, my children's names, and all of that, because I know how hard it is for me to recall. So sometimes I do that in a way to let them have the recollection, and then they'll send me back that information. Then we have a thread going with who they are, what their spouse's name is, who their children are, how old they are, where we met, and I'll snap a picture generally too of us, and I'll send it. So, I mean, it's a lot of information, but there's so much information, to your point, to remember, that taking those 2 minutes to jot down those notes, whether it was privately in my notes app or something like that, or it was through the text message, which I think happens to be the most beneficial to me. And then I'll go in and add those notes into a contact. But I'm hoping that Feather can help me with that. I'm like, oh my gosh, I meet somebody. Remind me that to reach back out to them. Remind me that I haven't talked to my mother-in-law in a month, and something like that. And that I can use the help in building that relationship. I do reach out on occasion, but again, there is human error. I need some AI to help me.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is like my thesis on this whole space is that the machine can help us, but the last mile needs to be human. And so to your point, right? Like even if the machine could listen, and I like OpenAI and all these other companies are trying to figure out how do you drop your phone, and it just like takes in everything. And even if it can listen, what you do with that is still human. But more importantly, you can even go and get an automated message and something that is meaningful and relevant and all of that. But like how you deliver it, when you deliver it, why you're delivering it to this person, like we can't take the person out of it. And you kind of are hitting on a couple of things, which is really it takes effort, whether it's writing it down and putting that 2 minutes of just care into actually doing the thing, and then setting a reminder, which gets untenable when you've got a lot of people that you're balancing and you're moving back and forth. So yeah, it's hard, and Feather's going to help solve for that. But the other part of it too is like kind of just holding yourself accountable. And Kristina, you and I have a dog. She looks like a tiger, and her name's Stella. And we take her to a local dog daycare called Dog Days. And I remember that one day, you were going to drop Stella off and you were excited to go do that, but got tied up with some meetings. And so you asked me to go take her. But as I was walking out the door, you came running out. And we're very adamant about making sure I told the people at Dog Days who were watching our dog that you were going to come by later. And I'd asked you, why do I need to tell them that? I was going to come pick the dog up after work. And you said that you promised to bring them Starbucks. And I am 100% certain, knowing these people, and they're great people, right? But like they're servicing, our family. I'm 100% certain they didn't ask you to go buy them Starbucks. But you were so fired up about going out of your way to go get the coffees for a handful of folks who watch our dog. That's you, right? That's the, I want to go out of my way to go do things and add value. And whether it's, checking in on somebody or bringing them a coffee. If anyone asks anyone who knows you, everyone's going to have a dozen at least of these stories. And it's a combination of like that you take the effort with remembering, but also taking the action, and that I think is it's all the difference. And stories are a big part of this podcast. So as we think about the lessons that you've learned over the years, I'd love to maybe hear if you could share with us your favorite story about a relationship, one that you're proud of, one that you've earned. What was it like? Who was it with? What did you do? What did you learn from it?
Well, I try to learn from everyone all the time. I think to your point is accountability is a huge thing for me when it comes to emotions, feelings, showing up, mental health in particular. I think having the accountability is huge because, again, I'll kind of go back to that, is that you can influence, but you can't change how other people are. But so, I mean, to that story that you just shared of taking the Starbucks to our Dog Days family there, like our dog was like our first child, right? And because I have made that extra effort, they make an extra effort with me. They send me pictures as if, they send me pictures of our dog playing and what she's doing and updates as if it was an actual daycare for children throughout the day, which is above and beyond and something that they don't have to do. But because we built that relationship, that they do that. Telling about a story or a person that has really changed and that I'm really proud of. I have many. Like it's so interesting because relationships matter so much to me, and helping others. Things are happening every day, and I feel that if you're giving that good output into the world, you receive that tenfold. And that might seem a little woo-woo, but it is 100% reigns true for me. And an example is today. I will, because it's top of mind, I went to get my nails done, which I haven't gotten to do.
Let's see them. Let's see
over a
it.
year.
Yay.
So it's I felt so, I was like, okay, I'm gonna make this work. I made sure that the baby was sleeping. I took the baby with me. I made sure I had coverage for work, all of these things to just make this happen. And I've made some friends with at the school that our daughter goes to. And it had their genuineness and has just been baffling, so amazing. And so I had a girlfriend meet me there. Her name is Ariane, and she is just an inspiration to me. And then I have another friend, Isha, who's also another mother, and they have inspired me to not only invest in other mothers, but to feel a calmness about motherhood. And so today I feel like I've met my match with some of these wonderful women that I've met, because I was getting my nails done and then I was by myself and the baby was there sleeping. One of them comes in and then the baby happened to wake up, ends up taking care of the baby so I can finish getting my nails done. And the other one who who didn't make it, called on the phone and paid for my hands and feet, like paid for my nails to be done without asking or anything. So and that's something that I would do, honestly. And I just feel like these relationships, as you grow in your life, new relationships come into play, and you also have old relationships to continue to after. But just appreciating what people want to do for you and then also giving back, it's just so important. And so I feel like these relationships, these new relationships that I've built through motherhood and through our child going to school, has been incredible and inspiring to me to continue to support other women.
That's super. I happen to know who you're talking about, and they're wonderful people. So as we get close to kind of wrapping this up,
Yeah.
We typically end with one practical habit or one practical approach that you could share with the people who are listening. Like, what can they do tomorrow or today that you recommend they do, that can help them make an impact in the quality of their relationships?
I would, for making an impact in quality relationships, if you feel something or you're thinking something, a good thought about someone, let them know. If you want to do something good and it can take a moment, a phone call to pay over the phone for someone's nails, do it. If you feel compelled, just do that. And also know that that's for you. I think that's one of the things I would say for building relationships, understanding that it doesn't need to necessarily be about reciprocity. It needs to be about you and what you want to put into that relationship.
Yeah, it's great. One of the amazing people we had on also had a similar sentiment, which is like, don't let it decay. Like that great thought could go and just save somebody. It could change their whole day, their whole mentality. I mean, it can, and even just like that effort. And you know what? To be fair, sometimes it's hard to do if you're reconnecting with somebody and you haven't spoken to them in a while. There's a lot of paranoia, I think. There's a lot of anxiety, and there's a lot of studies around this where people just don't make the call or send the text because they feel guilty about not having done it.
Yeah.
But if you can even just for once go past that particular barrier, do what Kristina is talking about doing, which is don't let it sit, right? Go share that thought with somebody, even if it's just saying hello. That's going to make just an incredible wave of impact on everybody. And if everyone did that once in a while, man, what a great place we'd be living in. So look, this has been really special. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. I love you. Thank you for being a part of this. And Kristina, you brought up a lot of really good points, right? Like the intentionality, the effort, the authenticity, the showing up, the putting in the effort, but also doing it in the way and trying to understand how that other person wants to so that way that you can kind of dip your toes in the water and level the relationship up together. Not everyone has that patience, and I think it's really important, and it shows, right? Like the community comes together stronger than ever, and it breeds immensity as you go. And what we're working on with Feather is, how do you take the technology aspect, how do you make it easier to go get access to that information, get easier to get some of the accountability measures in place, so that way you could focus on being more intentional, so you can focus on being more thoughtful, which was the first name that Kristina came up with for the app when we were originally jamming on it. But yeah, it's this has really resonated with me. I'm sure everyone who's listening, it's resonated as well. So feel free to drop some thoughts in the comments. And if you're interested in checking out what we're building, how we're thinking about relationship intelligence, please join us. Check out feather.vip and certainly reach out. My name is Jeremy. This has been Birds of a Feather. Join us next time for more relationship intelligence.